Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Spouse Link live stream, the Unplanned Military Transition, Giving Yourself Grace with Heidi Dindial. Now, not every transition from active duty to civilian life is afforded years of planning and preparation. While we military spouses would love all the time in the world to make sure every form is completed, every task accomplished, every check mark in place, a firm date with the movers scheduled and our kids settled and a grand retirement ceremony planned, sometimes that reality is very, very different. It's not uncommon to be surprised by the news that the life you've been living for years, if not decades, is now suddenly coming to a close. Hi, surprise, it's retirement and transition time. Now, this can happen for many reasons, but the common element that happens when that transition surprises you are those feelings of panic that consume us because we're confronted with a massive life change. You're losing community. You may be having an identity crisis. There's a lengthy transition to-do list that has to be resolved. And now you have 6 months, 4 months, 7 months, whatever amount of time that you've been given by your branch of service. Well, meet Heidi. She's a military spouse and veteran, and she's my current poster child for the unplanned transition. Heidi found out retirement was imminent with less than a year of warning. So this live stream today, I'm hoping it's going to be that real, raw conversation from the perspective of a spouse that is currently living in that moment as best she can, while trying to make sure that her service member and her family have the smoothest transition possible, despite the short timeline that they've been given. So thank you for joining me today on this Spouse Link live stream. I'm Anna Larson. I am your Spouse Link ambassador. On my other side job, I'm a copywriter, I'm a digital marketer, I'm a homeschool mom, and I am also a retired military spouse. We retired almost 2 years ago. These live streams are for military spouses looking for connection and support as they near or cross over into transition or retirement from active duty military world. Now, Spouse Link was created in 2012 by AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, to support, inform, and inspire military spouses around the world. So as we dive into today's topic, please comment, share, tell me where you're listening from, all of the things. Not only do I value what you have to say, but I really love the interaction from our community as we have these conversations, because these are for you. The whole reason we're doing this is to make sure that you're getting what you need. So without further comment, I am going to add myself back in, and I am going to move over to Heidi's slide for her bio and tell you a little bit about my guest today so that we can bring her on and start this conversation. So Heidi is a senior consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, an active duty Navy spouse and a Navy veteran. She is a graduate of Old Dominion University with a bachelor's in science degree. She brings over 20 years of experience to active duty service members and their families. Currently, she's serving as the MFAN, or Military Family Advisory Network advisor for the 2021 through 2023 cohort. Additionally, she dedicates her time to serving as a community resource and scholarship judge at the National Military Family Association. She is actively involved in volunteering within the Norfolk region, spreading positivity to military families. And in her free time, she enjoys running and paddleboarding. Other than the running, totally my type of lady right here. So I'm super excited to bring her on. Let me pull these slides down, and I am going to bring Heidi up.
Hi. Hello.
Hey. It's so good to have you here, Heidi. Thank you so much for agreeing to join me on this Spouse Link live stream. I am super excited to have you on as a guest.
Thank you for bringing me.
I know that you have like a million things happening in your world right now. And so it just means a lot that you're willing to take some time to come and talk with me, because I mean, so Heidi and I were talking behind the scenes a little bit about how this unplanned transition stuff, where you get your time cut short or it's a surprise, you're no longer in the military, all that kind of stuff, happens way more frequently than people think it does, right?
Yes, it happens a lot, actually. I've had a lot of people that have said, like, hey, my husband has 1 week left. What do I do? I don't even know at this point.
Yeah.
Where to start?
Go have a cup of coffee, sit back and enjoy the ride. You got a week. There's literally no way that you're going to get it all done.
Right. It's definitely it's a huge transition, not just for the service member, but for the family as well. Because you're kind of like in this limbo period where you're like, what do I do with my life? Because we're so accustomed to like unplanned lifestyle, but then when it's like the end of the road unplanned, it's a whole different
It
ball
is.
game.
Yes, it absolutely is. I'm going to throw this up really quick. So, Heidi and I met on LinkedIn. And first of all, let me ask you this because I'm afraid I butchered your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Dindial, but a lot of people say Dindial, so I just say
Yeah,
Dindial.
I kind of went Dindial and kind of like, like, ooh, I forgot to ask her how to pronounce it. All right, so Dindial.
Yes.
Okay. So Heidi and I met on LinkedIn a few weeks ago because she posted this article that she had written about her transition. And this is what kind of spurred us to do this live stream. So, can you tell everyone just a little bit about this article, how it came to be, what it's for, like kind of what you wrote about?
Yes. So I wrote this article. I was asked to. We're doing like a transition series within InFan, and so I was asked to write an article. My transition story wasn't like my husband hit 20 years, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm done yet." So we had just gotten orders, just did a local move here, so we were like, "Okay, everything's going to be great." And he had started in his new command, everything was great, and then he actually got in a car accident, and that's what spurred up all of this stuff for him to start transition. So we were definitely not planning that. It was very unplanned. And when he came home and said, "Hey, I'm not cleared anymore, and I have to retire," yeah, it was just I don't know. Nothing prepares you for that, right? Like when they're like, this is the end of the road. Because in my mind, I was like, oh, we have like a couple more years, like it's gonna be great. And then the end of the road happens, and you're just like, I don't know. It was a lot to process, definitely.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
it was weird. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it was weird because, up to the 20-year mark, I'm like, okay, we're going to gear up for this. And then you start gearing up a little bit. It's like starting your car, right? You start to warm it up and then like, oh no, just joking. Like it's not really going to happen. And then it really did happen.
I can so relate to this because, I mean, I love to tell my own story. It's the whole reason I do these retirement and transition live streams, right? But it was the same thing for us. It was COVID, and my spouse didn't have to go to work for so long, right? That he'd go in every once in a while, but then they were like, no, everybody stay home. Don't come in. We can't have groups here. Or somebody just tested positive. Everybody stay home. And there was so much of that. And then one day when it was time to start going back to work continually, it was I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You know what? He's like, I think I'm done. I mean, I've done 23 years. I'm ready to be done. I don't want to put boots on anymore. I think I'm done. And I'm like, whoa. That was not the plan. We were not retiring out of Fort Hood. We were going somewhere else. Like all of those things that we had planned for were suddenly changed, right? And that is overwhelming. It is overwhelming because now you have to come up with a new plan on the fly, which is something military spouses are supposed to be great at, right?
Yes, adaptability, but that there's just a whole different level when it comes
Yeah.
to transition.
So true. I want to bring up this comment from Ann Kramer also, because she says it's much different when you are told you're being done versus deciding to be done. And that is a really good point. Your family didn't get to decide to be done. You were
Right.
told this isn't going to be your life anymore.
And
So how
and
was
that
that news?
that I mean, as a military spouse, it's a little heart-wrenching, but for my husband, it's like your whole identity. Like he joined the military after high school, like, he's coming up on his like 23rd year. So it's like your whole identity is wrapped in into the military and being a part of the military. And, it's a selfless service. You're always doing things for other people. So when you're told, I'm sorry, you can't do this anymore, it was earth shattering for him, to be honest. Like, it really was, because it's like, who are you? You don't even know, right? Like, hobbies, a life, like it's definitely, and I've talked about it with a few people, like, we're not the only ones that were like, oh, identity, like, what does that like look like?
Yeah.
So it was a lot to take in at first and process.
Yeah. And I know that there's like, hey, start 3 years out and plan this time frame. And you guys didn't get the opportunity to even do that. Like,
No.
granted, you're nearing your 20-year mark, right? Or you're at your 20-year mark. So there's kind of like an expectation of, hey, you should probably be thinking about retirement, maybe take those TAP classes, maybe this. But let's be real. Like let's have some real talk here. How much time do we have to go just in case we decide to retire in the next year, right? Like, nobody does that. I don't have the time to do that. I'm sure your family, you work a full-time job. You don't have the time to do that. Your spouse is active duty. He doesn't have the time to do that. So it's unrealistic, right? For people to be expected to be able to plan and prepare just for the just in case this might happen and we're no longer active duty, right? You don't do that until the announcement's been made.
He actually had took like a TAPS class, just like, perhaps maybe he was going to get out. I don't know. He was undecisive, but he was a little proactive in that department. So he's taken TAPS twice, but even at that, like he said that the two classes are definitely nothing alike. He had different instructors, different information. So that was really interesting in itself, that it wasn't the same process each time.
Well, I'm going to have to applaud him for taking the initiative. I guess then it's my spouse did not have that initiative.
I don't think most spouses do. Sometimes he's like super proactive, and then there's other times where we're like, okay, we need to get this moving, like yesterday.
Well, so much of our transition is about our active duty spouse, right? Because it's really them that's leaving the service. It's not us, even though our family members, the spouse and all the children that might be involved, right? All of us go through the deployment cycle with them. All of us go through the moves. All of us, we are the ones changing schools and jobs frequently, just as much as they are with every PCS move in that sense. But so much of the transition is focused solely on the military member, right? The active duty service member, as it rightly should be. They absolutely need the services, the TAP classes, the workshops, all the nonprofit organizations that are geared towards supporting that job transition and life transition and the VA stuff and their medical needs, all that kind of thing. But it often feels like, from the military spouse perspective, that we're like this add-on factor that we might be invited, we might not. Like, we haven't just done these same decades of military service with our spouse in a different way, but still there for all of those moments. So just from your perspective then, Heidi, what are these stressors that you're feeling from the military spouse perspective as you're going through this transition right alongside your spouse?
I think the biggest one for me is like, where am I going to fit in, right? Because you go from this active duty status where you have this community, you have your little tribe that you're always looking to, and you reinvent it every time someone leaves or you leave or someone comes. And then now we're going into this retired life, and I'm like, what does that even look like? Like, how do I find my tribe? And it was interesting because, some people are like, you're not really losing your people, but then it's like trying to figure out, because a lot of my friends are still active duty. So like, am I still the cool kid? I'm not sipping that Kool-Aid anymore. So that has been the biggest, I think for me, the biggest thing is like, where do we fit? Like, cause it's kind of like, oh, you're retired, bye, c'est la vie. Where do you fit in all of this? I think when you're plugged into the military pretty hardcore, it's like, it's the unknown. I mean, we're used to the unknown, right? But I think it's a different unknown because you have this like family that's steady all the time, whether, so it's always been me and my kids, like that's the steady part of it. Even though we're active duty, we've been able to plug in and find people everywhere.
Yeah.
But now you're like adding your husband back into it, and like you're and you're navigating that. Just the other day he called me and I was in the meeting for work, and he's like, babe, like I have no clue what this person needs. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? Like, and mind you, I'm in a meeting, but he didn't know what his bank account number and routing number was for the VA retirement. So
because it's something that you did, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just the little things that you don't think about, that they haven't been accustomed to or haven't really, been aware. Like he knows he has a bank account. He just didn't know, hey, I can pull up my app, like, and use that, because being on a ship, like being deployed, gone all the time, they don't have that capability right now to be able to pull out a phone and log on to a bank account unless they're in a port. So he's never really had that piece to worry about.
Yeah. I mean, so Heidi and I were talking like back in the green room area before we started the live stream, and she said, you don't know what you don't know. And that's exactly what you're saying here, right? You get thrown into this transition and you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're going to need necessarily. And not only are you now trying to manage your own identity shift and loss of community, but your spouse needs your support because you're the one who managed that financial side and had the bank account and routing number. You knew where to find that, where he might not. And it's going to be a different thing for every family, right? Yeah. For me, I mean, my breakdown was the on-post library. I'd always had, so silly, but I'd always had the on-post library as something I would take my kids to. I'm a homeschool mom. We spend a lot of time in libraries, right? So we'd always gone to the on-post library. We'd always gone to their activities there. And now all of a sudden we're retiring and I didn't know if I could still use that library. And it was just that unknown factor. Is it a big deal? There are 7 other public libraries within, a 30-minute drive of me. There's no lack of libraries. But the unknown factor of that one piece of community that I could potentially lose is when I had my DD214 day breakdown. That's what I like to call it, right? Aww. Like it was that one day like where I just like collapsed and just went, I don't know what to do anymore. And it was that like, because nobody was answering the phone. I couldn't get the answer to the question. I'm stressed out. Will my retire ID, which I still don't have, even though he's walking home in about an hour with a DD214, I still don't have a retiree ID. Anyway, these kinds of things that build up and create these pressures and stressors, right?
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, because we were just eating dinner. It was like 2 nights ago, and my daughter actually said like, so we can't go to like those like events that you normally go to, so it's command functions, right? Like they have family days, they have like, I think it's like for Christmas, they have like a kid's Christmas party. She's like, so we can't go to those anymore? And I'm like, no, we can't. We're not going to be invited to those anymore. So it was just interesting that like even your kids start thinking about things that affect their life that they're accustomed to.
Yeah. And that's a huge change. I don't think people sometimes realize what a big change that is, because you are used to a certain thing. And if you've been in this lifestyle for as many like decades, even if it's only been a couple of years, honestly, when you're used to a routine or having access to certain things or being able to rely on, hey, this is happening, and then it's taken away in less than a year and everything's got to switch and you've got to find that new norm. It is stressful. And our kids, I mean, I love that your daughter asked that question, but she's probably feeling a little bit of loss from that. Like, oh, that's going to be a bummer. I liked those parties we went to, and not having that active duty status name badge or whatever, I mean, it's invisible, but
yeah.
But not having that badge of I'm active duty, your military card your ID doesn't say it anymore, any of that. like does put you in a different category where those unknowns are constantly there. Does this still apply to me? Can I still use this resource? Am I still part of this community here? And that can be really devastating for some families. So, whew, okay. So you had written this article, this MFAN article, and when I reached out to you, I was like, I love what you wrote, but she focused. I'm talking to the audience here
It's
now.
okay.
But Heidi focused on specifically the things that her spouse was doing to help her with the transition, or that she was helping her spouse do to transition effectively. And then I brought her onto this live stream. I said, Heidi, I really want to focus on what are you doing for yourself to transition effectively. And so in the article, she talked about turning fears into smile and cheers. So my next question for you is, Heidi, what are you doing that's allowing you to turn those fears into smiles and cheers when you have such a limited amount of time to get it all done?
So I think communication is definitely like the biggest thing, because everything I've seen across the board about transition is, the failed communication. Because when you're just used to doing it all, it's kind of like you're running the show, and your spouse comes in and out, right? They come home, they come back from deployment, whatever. It's just like you're the constant, they're the in and out. And so I actually have been going to the gym, and that has been my saving grace. And then in the midst of, transition, we got a puppy. I don't know what we were thinking.
You guys are you're just looking for the whipping. You're like, yeah, let's just add a few more stressful things on.
Forgot what that was like. So we actually, he's putting so much pressure on himself. Like, God love him, but it's just like the stress of everything, I think, lately has been a lot. And not in a bad way. It's just like the job, trying to figure out like, what do I want to do? Like post-military. So we go for a lot of walks. Like that's our calming thing. But I think just being able to talk to my friends and the resources that are available, TRICARE, trying to figure out TRICARE because it changes like every day.
It does. Yes. And then once you get there, you're like, wait a second, I thought it was this, and it's not that at all. And then you figure it out on the fly, just like you do. It's funny because so much of it's still like active duty, where you're just figuring stuff out on the fly, but you don't have that safety net of active duty where you're still going to be taken care of regardless. Does that make sense? Like,
no, it does. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like you live in a chaotic world, and not all of it's chaos like every single day, but the military family life is very chaotic because it's so much uncertainty. But you always have that steady paycheck. You don't have to worry about like anything, right? Your medical's taken care of, your dental's taken care of. Life insurance, that's another one that we're like, we need to figure this out like really fast. So you're afforded all these opportunities and everything's taken care of. And then now it's just like you have to navigate it and then figure it out before it's too late.
Yeah, right. You do before, and that's the thing, right? The before it's too late is like where the stressor comes in, because you do have a finite amount of time. I mean, I was telling Heidi again before we came on the live that we had a year, and then they cut my spouse's transition by 4 months. So he never took terminal leave ever. He wasn't able to, because all of a sudden our timeline became compressed into this shorter amount of time. And when that happens, now you're panicking. I want to pull this up really quick, because if you have not yet looked at your transition timeline, this is I'm going to drop the link in here, but AFMA just came out with this transition timeline that starts at 12 months out. Or maybe there might be another page. I think I just pulled this one from the 12, 11, and 10 months. But look at this laundry list of things, right, that you have to do. And if you have less than a year, let's say you get out, how many months did you end up having total, Heidi?
So we have 10 months. Yeah. 10
okay.
months.
So 10 months. So you've got 2 extra months worth of tasks, I'm going to say, that you still have to accomplish within that 10-month time frame. And these aren't like necessarily small things. I mean, it's like thinking about your GI Bill, looking at mentorship programs. Where do you want to start working? Updating your resume. I mean, these are things that take time and energy and effort, right? Like and this is only for the service member. This doesn't necessarily apply to what the spouse has to do as well. This is what the service member it needs to be thinking about. I would love for a military spouse checklist to be created. Maybe we'll have to work on that.
I know
Right?
that honestly, that would be phenomenal because I've seen so many checklists for the active duty and nothing really checklist for military spouse. It's like
Yes.
navigating uncharted territory for real.
Yeah. So if we pull Amy says so many decisions to make leading up to transition. I think that's what makes it so stressful for the service member and spouse. Yes. I mean, we're listing out some of them, but every family is unique, right? So what we have listed here is going to be a help. It's going to give you a few things that you're going to be able to check off your list, but it's not going to be all encompassing in terms of what we have to do in order to make sure that that transition is super effective. And I think that's part of the hard part is again, you're looking at the unknown. And when we fly by the seat of our pants as military spouses, we still have that safety net of we're going back to our military community in some way, shape, or form. But now you're getting out and that community isn't necessarily available to you anymore in the same way, right?
Right.
Whew, okay. So I don't want to stress anyone out, but I did drop this transition timeline into the comments. So go click on that link and it's going to just ask you for your email address. And then it's going to send you this transition timeline. So you can take a look and see, at least from the next year out, like what kind of things your spouse is going to have to go to. But as you're listening to this conversation with Heidi and I would love for you to start thinking about what is it that you as a military spouse also need, because you're going to need things. I focused 100% of my energy on my spouse. And I know Heidi's doing that too, whether she thinks she is or not. She's going to the gym. Yes. And you're going on walks and communicating, right? But you're still doing a lot of the heavy lifting and making sure that your spouse transitions properly, because that's what military spouses do. We're that backbone that makes those things happen, makes the PCS function, makes the the job change work, gets our kids into the new school zone, gets gets the new house purchased and or sold and or rented, or whatever it is that you're doing with every single move. So I just want to say, like, think about in terms of what is it on your checklist that you need to identify. Heidi, what's one thing you'd put on yours, like other than going to the gym? Is there one that you would add to a military spouse checklist? This isn't a question I prepared her for.
It's interesting because lately, just talking to spouses or like reading things, there's a lot of spouses that are like overseas or their spouse is going to be deployed. And I'm like, gosh, I can't even imagine that. Like we're here stateside and he's like not deployed. So I don't even know how you navigate that. That's definitely got to be even more stressful. But I think honestly, just knowing what the benefits are, because the dental, they don't tell you specifically, but you only have, I think, like 60 days to elect that, but then you have 90 days for TRICARE. So those are two different discrepancies, right? When you would probably think, oh, I just have 90 days. And then you're stuck like, oh, I don't have dental insurance anymore. But I think just the high level things for us, it was like, okay, are we going to live here? Our son's in college here and he lives at home. So right now we're like, okay, well, we'll stay here unless he gets a job somewhere else and makes incredible money. But that's definitely our plan, is to stay here in the Hampton Roads area. But the high level things, I think, even as a spouse, like life insurance, the military's like always, I have separate life insurance, but the military's always had like life insurance for our kids, life insurance for the spouse. So it's like, those are things that you really don't think about either.
Yeah.
Getting out, and then, the older you get, like the higher it gets. So
Yes.
they don't tell you that either. Making sure that you have like wills because I asked him, I was like, can we even do wills now, like on base? And he's like, I don't think we can do that anymore. So it's honestly, it's just very interesting how you expend your whole life surrounded in a military community where resources are there, and then I think that's the eye-opening thing, right? Like, and then you retire and you're like, you're barred from everything.
That's what it feels like, right? And it's funny because people don't think, they're like, no, you can still access these resources, but it's not the same. And I think that until you get to that point where that retirement or transition happens and you experience that you're like, oh, I get it now. So I can do some things, but you have to ask, do you offer that for retired veterans and spouses too? And then you feel like, gosh, I'm like, again, you become that afterthought of, is this resource something I can use? So it's like you're creating a whole new world for yourself, even though you still live, maybe, at least for us, right? We're at Fort Hood. So we still live in the middle of a giant military community, but I'm still having to carve out my own space that isn't active duty. And I know a million spouses have done it before me. I don't know where they're at. I don't know where all the retired Fort Hood spouses are. They've all done their own thing, and there's not a single one that's like knocking on my door going, let me lead the way. Come here, sister. I'm going to show you how to do this. Right?
I think, yeah, that's definitely where my passion lies. Because I had a friend call and, she was like, I don't even know where to start. And I'm like, well, I'm navigating it. I don't have all the answers, but I have some, so I can help you.
Yeah.
I think even just like transition period, you have someone that does like a 4-year enlistment and then they decide randomly, hey, I'm not going to re-enlist anymore. I encountered a couple, when I was doing Blue Star family welcome week, and they were just randomly in Starbucks and they're like, hey, what is this about? And then they're like, yeah, he decided last week that he doesn't want to be in like re-enlisting. So we have like a month to figure out what we're going to do. And you can see the wife, like she just looked mortified, but like, the service member, he looked pretty gung-ho about it. And my heart went out for her. And I was like, look, these are immediate resources that you need to look into. So I think that transition definitely looks different for every family. There's no one size fits all, right? But there's definitely high level things that you can utilize to help. And food insecurity is huge, like post military retirement housing. Those are things I never even thought of. I mean, you hear about it, right? You hear about veterans that are struggling, but you don't think about those things like on a level until you get there and you're like, wow. And you're looking at that even, and you're like, my biggest fear is I see like, you read the articles where they're like, their spouse couldn't find a job and they have to move back with their parents. And I was like, I love our parents, but I could not. So
you're like, that was never part of the plan. Like transition retirement is supposed to be this magical journey into this wonderful post-military life. And if you end up back home with your parents, you're like, wait, this is not the way it was supposed to go. Like, where did we fail, right? And there is a sense of like, oh, we failed somewhere along the way. And it's not necessarily like that. It's all those unknown forces that come at you that you're not prepared for. That's why I think having conversations like this, Heidi, is so important, right? It's like just making sure the spouse knows, hey, there are going to be things that come and sideswipe you and knock you out and maybe even give you a concussion that you are totally unprepared for. Not for real. Nobody's going to sideswipe you and give you a concussion.
It just feels like
something emotionally and mentally. This is what's going to happen to you. You think you're ready, and then something's going to blindside you, and you're going to realize that's not something you thought about, because you cannot be 100% prepared for every single contingency that might happen. I did a live stream a couple of months ago, and there was a statistic that had just come out, and then I think I posted about it on LinkedIn because I was so shocked by it. But it was like 90% of retired military had less than $500 in savings. Like, that blew my mind. And I'm thinking, like, number one on almost every transition retirement list is start saving your money, right? Because when you get out of the military, you're going to have, there's a lot of extras that you're now
Oh, yeah.
paying for that you're not used to paying for. And it's not that we get so many great benefits. I mean, our soldiers aren't paid as much as what you would call a going rate. So we add in that BAH and all that other factors that are going to increase their pay scale to make it more competitive with the non-active duty world. But those go away once you're no longer active. Taxes are different, costs are different, services are different, healthcare is different. All of that is now more expensive. And if you have less than $500 in the bank, then what you're talking about, things like food insecurity, stuff that maybe you hadn't even considered before, become a reality that you may not be prepared for, Whew, that's some heavy stuff.
It's there though. It's the stuff that people don't want to talk about. I think, we've been like definitely on this whole financial realm because we have to pay property taxes here. There's a lot of stuff, but it's things that people really aren't prepared for. And I think, transition, obviously for the military, they have like the things that you have to do, but these people in the military are so used to like, it's your birth month recall, so go to the military and get like a physical, just things that have been so automatedly processed in their lives that there's no I guess like reality of what is outside of the military until you get there, and then it's definitely it is.
I don't want to use the word institutionalized, but I'm going to use it because I realize even me, myself, had been to some part, especially with healthcare. I had no clue how it worked to go to a doctor outside of our military facility. I didn't have any idea. I'm on the phone with this poor nurse practitioner. I'm like, okay, wait a second. So then I just do this and then that, and then this happens. And she's like, yeah. She's like, we're going to call you for follow-ups. I'm like, you're going to call me for follow-ups? And then I'm like, well, what if I need this? She's like, well, then you just ask for it. I'm like, wait, I just asked for it? Wait, that's not the way it normal. Like it just, it's little things like that I didn't realize I have been conditioned to expect it to be done a certain way after 15 years of military care, the same exact way we were, and so when you leave that and now you go into the civilian world and it's different, it's relearning that. You feel a little bit like this infant, like taking their first little baby steps going, oh, I feel really dumb because I'm in my 40s and I should know this, right? Right. I should know how to do this. I should know.
Well, that's another thing too. Like, my kids go to like the TRICARE clinic and they're like, yeah, when you retire, it's based on space availability. And I'm like, what? Like, I thought they're just grandfathered in. They've been there since they were like little, I mean, these are the doctors that like have seen them forever. Like that whole military like process is just, it's always been there. And now it's like, it's based on space availability, and we all know that there's no space in military clinics. So
which is why I ended up moving off to an off post and doing that was one of our deciding factors for choosing standard over prime for TRICARE purposes, right? I mean, if we get down into the like making those decisions, that was one of the factors for us. I'm like, I can't base my children's and my healthcare on space available like status. Like that doesn't work. What if there's an emergency? What if we need something? What if I need more regular? I need more, something more stable than that. And that's what it comes down to, is like really looking at those things, but then having that loss of saying, they've been with this doctor, they know this clinic, they know this space, and now it's going to all change for them. And you have to recognize and acknowledge that as part of your journey. And it's going to be little things like the on-post library, and it's going to be big things like healthcare.
Right.
It does not matter. So, okay. So Heidi, tell us, what are you most looking forward to? Because it's not all bad news. I mean, we've been kind of rambling. We've been talking about these stressors, right? Like we can wax long for a long time about the stressors that come with transition, but there's also a very positive aspect to it. So what are you most looking forward to?
So I think the number one biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is that we can leave like the radius of like outside of the um I forget what the miles is, but like we don't have to put a request sheet in to go anywhere, right? Like my husband can just be like, let's go away for the weekend, and there's no one like, you can't go because you have to put a request sheet in for that.
Yeah, there's no request needed. There's no permission. That is an awesome perk, I will say. Like, and it's a little weird. It's like, oh, we can just take a trip
Yeah.
if we want. That's kind of awesome. So where are you going to go? Tell me what's your dream vacation that's going to be happening in about 10ish months from now?
So, well, this is a big year. And I don't know if I planned this out right or not. My husband's not going. I'm actually going with my girlfriend, but we're going to Greece before he retires. So I'm hopeful
I
I'm,
love
I'm
that.
hoping it like lessens the blow of all the stress after I come back. But we have Iceland on the bucket list to in the next year. But our daughter actually starts driving next year, and he was deployed, and COVID hit, and so I had to teach our son all by myself. 10 out of 10 do not recommend that. So he's going to be home for that. That is probably the second biggest thing that I'm super excited about, because I don't
And
have
handing
to
off
worry
the
about it.
driver's instruction to your spouse. I love that so much.
Yeah, I'm really excited about not having to do that.
That is so great. I love that. Okay, so I'm just going to throw out an action item for anyone that is listening live or catching the replay. If you are getting ready to transition, I want you to just take a minute and sit down and think about your retirement and say, what is one thing I really want? Whether it's a trip to Iceland or handing off driving responsibilities for your newly minted 15-year-old that's going to learn how to drive, or if it's a job or a hobby that you've been doing that you really want to turn into a small business, or if it's a skill that you want to learn and you want to go back to school for it or take a workshop or a class, or whatever that might be. I want to start a garden and I've never been able to, right? Drop that thing down on a piece of paper and just stick it someplace that you're going to see it. Your calendar, if you have a vision board, I mean, whatever that's going to be, write it and tape it to the back of your computer, whatever it is that you're going to see every day. Just think about that one thing that you're really looking forward to, because sometimes when these stressors are happening, you forget why the heck you're doing this. And you're like, just stay in. Nope. Tell them you changed your mind. You're not retiring. We're going back to active duty, right? And you feel like you want to do that. You just want to like say, no, I'm not doing this process anymore. So just remind yourself of what that one thing is that you're going to get to do, because you are retired or transitioned out, and nobody's going to tell you no at that point. So, okay. Heidi, we are nearing the end of our conversation. I want to bring this up. Can you tell people if they want to connect with you or reach out to you about their own transition experience, how can they find you best?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I like LinkedIn. There's good information there and great people. That's how I found you. So LinkedIn, message me if you have questions, if you need resources, you're confused about the process. I don't know everything. I'm definitely not an expert, but I have learned a thing or two, and I know some valuable people that are experts that can help. So best of luck if you're going
Yeah.
through this.
Yes. And just like Heidi, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I mean, my whole purpose as a Spouse Link ambassador for retiring and transitioning is to make sure that you can find the resources that you need, that you don't feel alone. And if you just want to have a smack talk section, I am available, because clearly I've got a lot to say about the way things can go right and the way things can go wrong. And I've heard many, many stories. And so I just want any spouses out there listening right now to know you are not alone. This is not, I promise you, somebody else has gone through this or is going through it. So, Look, we've got a comment. My husband's expected retirement is January 2025. Most looking forward to planning where we will live and owning our own home again. Ah, that's a good one,
I
Amy.
love that.
Write it
Yeah.
down. Write it down and stick it on your whatever you see every day. I love my house. I will say that has been a huge bonus. And when we decided to stay in Texas, I put a requirement in that we had to have a pool because it's like 1,000 degrees here. So I said, if we're going to stay here for at least 10 years, then we also want a pool because I'm a water baby. And so we did. And so this is a good, happy space for me now. And that was an unexpected bonus that came from our transition. So you're going to see those too, right?
Yes.
All right. So one last thing. I am going to throw this up one more time. Next week, I know it's coming fast, but next week, Ann Kramer, she's an LCSW, that's a licensed counselor of social work, and she works at the VA. Anyway, she is going to come on, and we're going to talk about unpacking emotions during transition. And I just want to throw this out there because Ann has a very unique perspective. She works with your veterans at the VA. She's hearing their side of the story, and she's going to come on and talk to us about the military spouse side of it as well, and how those two might collide occasionally, how they might interact, and you can create a beautiful sunrise from it, and how sometimes you're going to see explosive fireworks and not so much happiness that comes from that transition emotions. And so I hope that you can join me next week, March 1st at 11 a.m. Central. Again, on all the places that we stream for Spouse Link, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Heidi, can you give us one parting word of advice that you would say to a military spouse that just found out that they're transitioning in less than a year and they're looking at that to-do list and they're freaking out? What is one thing that you would say to them?
I think honestly, just give yourself grace and realize that being a military spouse is a part of your identity. So even though it's kind of like a breakup, you're still going to have all those feelings. And if you don't like view that as part of your identity, you can recreate a new one, and just give yourself grace in the process. Because there's definitely days where we're like, okay, this is amazing. And then there's days like we just have to walk away because that's what's going to happen. And it doesn't make it bad. Like next week, I'm so excited to listen to Ann's emotions. So I just say, give yourself grace. There's no perfect solution for transition, and everybody's looks different.
That is so true. There is no perfect solution. That is a great way to end it. And we did title this Giving Yourself Grace. And that's really kind of what this is all about, right? It's like just reminding yourself it's not going to go perfect. You're not going to get it perfect. You're going to feel all sorts of things, and that's okay. Give yourself the space to do that because you need it. You need it. It's not just about your spouse. It's not just about your veteran. It is about you as well. And that's really the message, I think, for today. It is about you as the military spouse too. It is about your children. They need that grace also. They're going to have some high emotions. And if they're teenagers, hold on. It's coming because they've got some strong opinions about where they want to live and what they're used to. And this can be rough on them as well. So take that giving yourself grace advice from Heidi and run with it. I highly recommend it. I wish I'd done more of it during my own transition. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Heidi, for being my guest today. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and sharing your story. If you're out there and you're going through transition, connect with Heidi on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, or sign up for the Spouse Link newsletter. I'm going to drop that link in there, and that Spouse Link newsletter is going to give you all of the what's happening in the Spouse Link world, including these transition and retirement live streams that are going to be coming up over the next year. So I look forward to seeing everybody. Heidi, I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy your time left as an active duty spouse, but I cannot wait to hear all about your trip to Iceland. Actually, Greece first. I'm feeling super jealous about that right now. So your trip to Greece and then your trip to Iceland is with your spouse once that retirement happens.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, we're going to say our goodbyes. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you.